Merci Christian et Christian. Je vais demander maintenant à Gerhard Bosch de venir nous entretenir quelques mots sur l'expérience allemande et il nous restera quelques minutes par la suite pour des interventions et des questions de la salle. Gerhard Bosch.
Merci. Je vais parler en anglais, c'est plus facile pour moi. So I will give you a flashlight on the German debate, which is partly very similar as your debate. First, I will talk on the context. This is the German high-tech strategy. And by the way, you probably might not know that the term Industry 4.0 was invented by the former CEO of SAP, the software company, in 2011. And a German Employers Association created a national platform, and the idea was to create a hype, an atmosphere of departure, and also to pull out a lot of money from the government. And they were successful. Everybody's speaking now about Industry 4.0. The term is making an international career. And we are speaking of work 4.0, of care 4.0, of vocational trainings 4.0, for everything, not yet marriage 4.0, whatever this means. So the high-tech strategy in Germany is an extremely important background. And until 2010, the German R&D strategy of the government was focused only on technologies. This was changed. In 2010, the focus was on society's need, on climate change, etc. And a cross-cutting subject was, of course, the use of new technologies. So, therefore, this platform Industry 4.0. And what you can see is that in these fields, work is missing. And the unions were upset when they first read these documents of the government. And I think that the whole high-tech strategy at the beginning was only technology interested, and this was also a way to keep unions out of decision making in these programs. And in 2015, when the Great Coalition was formed, the Social Democrats asked, because of the pressure of the unions, to add a future of work program as an additional priority. So a sustainable work environment has now become an element of the high-tech strategy in Germany, and we have a certain tradition following Sweden's experience of humanization of work programs in the 70s and 60s. A second background is R&D policy is really a national issue. It's pushed by German industry, also by union. And the idea is to reach the goal of 3% of GDP investment in R&D. And 1%, the government committed itself to invest 1%, and industry should invest 2%. And this relation is quite interesting, because in the US it's much more financed by the government than by companies themselves. In Germany, the strength of the companies is really that they follow high road strategies and they invest themselves a lot of money in R&D. And the state focuses in Industry 4.0, of course, on basic research and applied research in research institutes, but also in forming networks of companies at regional level, and I'll give you soon an example. The future of work projects, there are yearly tenders, about 40 million euro are available each year, and there are yearly tenders on specific programs like competencies for digital work, health and safety, new forms of internal flexibility, etc. And all projects need the participation of researchers and committed companies. By committed companies, I mean the companies have to sign that they really provide resources, give access to companies. So these are really, and it has to be more than one company, a group of companies. So networks are created and exchanged between researchers and companies. Here you see the importance of R&D. In Germany, we nearly reached the 3%, and you can also see that Israel has invests more than 4%, and in R&D and has now become one center of software development in the world. So Industry 4.0 is really driven by R&D investments. And this is a typical example of a cluster in North Rhine-Westphalia. It's a cluster of 24 core companies in the manufacturing industry, and there are links established with universities in the region, and this cluster is financed by the government with about 110 million euros, so a lot of money, and they have their own cluster organization, and they are doing many projects, and an important project, for example, is also transfer of knowledge to small and medium-sized companies, because the big companies depend on their also on their subcontractors. My second point is active trade union policy. So the first thing is the union has to have a view on the importance of the new technologies, and they are in Germany, in the manufacturing sector, definitely not resisting modernization, but they also want that German industry is a cutting edge over the next 20 years, or remains to be the cutting edge, and introducing proactively new technologies is the only way to secure jobs in the long run, and also to improve working conditions, because new technologies also have the potential of creating better jobs, which is not the main issue in many countries. So a proactive approach is needed, and big risks are seen in underinvestment of skills and underinvestment in innovative work organizations. So what unions do, they act at different levels. One level is influencing research priorities. Now unions succeeded. They have representatives in the steering boards of big research programs, but not in all research programs, but those which are linked with manufacturing industry, for example, and humanization of work and future of work. The second point is they try to use the available money and form own networks with researchers and organize research projects. For example, skill formation in 25 machine tool companies, and the money is given by the government. And then they have own projects on Industry 4.0. I will give you an example later on. And finally, they are thinking, what should we do with collective bargainings? How should we react on the future challenges? So entitlements for training have become an important point in collective bargaining. And this morning somebody spoke on new classification systems. This was done 10 years before. We have now merged in the engineering industry the different classification systems of white and blue collar workers, and abolished all seniority rules, which is quite a revolution, and this covers 4 million workers and took 10 years. I give you one example on a regional project in North Rhine-Westphalia, the state where I live, with 22 million inhabitants, and it's done by this project, Future on Work 4.0, is done by 3 manufacturing unions, chemical, food, and engineering industry. And the unions identified 80 enterprises with proactive works councils, which was not easy to find companies in which technological change takes place, and really the works councils at the company level wanted to proactively be engaged. And then in these companies there took place 6 to 8 all-day workshops with the help of consultants, and there took place a stock taking of the introduction of new technologies in each department. And if the works councillors were not competent to really give detailed reports on the changes of the work organization in the last 5 years, then employees came into these meetings and explained what happened in the last years. And so there took place stock taking, what has happened with the introduction of new technologies, how working conditions have changed, and which problems are seen by the employees. And this is used to present the results at employees meeting and discuss future priorities and strategies with the management. And in the best case, there will be concluded a so-called future agreement, but the project just started. We have now one future agreement which reintroduces apprenticeship training and increases further training. And this is more or less the result of such a workshop. It's impossible to explain all this to you, but it's summarized. If you see a red circle, it signifies a problem. A green circle signifies a positive development, increase of jobs, for example. And behind this, you have many of these pictures for all departments in the company. And some of the first results of this is that the change is mostly gradual and not disruptive. So you have investment cycles, and it's the Industry 4.0 has not been introduced in 2012, and Industry 3.0 has stopped at that time, but this is a gradual process over a few decades. And a second result is the old problems are also the new problems. For example, like unforeseen overtime, high stress, but some problems are more pronounced than in the past, and this is especially underinvestment in skills, in retraining. And I think Dave mentions the problems that some older workers are not trained to be able to cope with the new technologies, and this is a substantial risk for them, because they are gradually decoupled from the technological development, and in the end, redundancy or early retirement is the only chance for them. Other subjects are flexible working hours, but it's not a big subject in Germany, because there we already have many agreements in the past on flexible working hours. My last point is modernization of vocational training. We have in Germany a national system of vocational training. About 5 to 6% of the employees are apprentices, and the training takes place in 350 blue and white collar occupations, and most workers in manufacturing are skilled. So what happens now with the new hype on Industry 4.0? The social partners are running the system of vocational training in Germany. They determine, they decide on the curricula, they decide how the occupations are cut and how they are modernized. So what happens is now they take 20 occupations as an example and bring together 50 to 60 experts for each occupation from the employer and employee side, and look at new tasks and new demands, and are going to modernize these occupations. And this is an example how Siemens is doing this. At the company level, they try to find out which tasks are done in certain fields and what has changed. And the problem is, if you design an occupation, you cannot just look on the new tasks and what you expect in 3 years, because you don't know what happens in 5 or 6 years. So you have to do two things. The first is to integrate new tasks, and I like the term pas dénaturer les métiers. C'est exactement l'approche allemande. You cannot get an airplane flying just with soft skills. So you need to modernize the old occupations and enrich them with new skills, and also you have to create a very broad base to be prepared, so that people are prepared to learn for the future. So my conclusions, Industry 4.0 is not new. The digitalization started earlier. It's a continuous process. But the hype which was created in Germany, which was introduced in Germany, created a culture of department, which is positive, and helped also to activate many different actors. Work 4.0 was at the beginning an appendix of Industry 4.0, and unions try to make it an important element, and they succeeded in some areas. And finally, there are many other additional problems which were not yet discussed here, like gig workers and new forms of work and outsourcing, etc. And there the union, the IG Metall, our metal workers union, employed somebody just to look at gig workers. Thank you very much.